I will go straight to agenda item 8, which is a presentation from Eden Park. Do we have Brett Winstanley, Nick Saunter and Vicky Salmon online?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Right, thank you. I will just, however, hand over to John Bishop to introduce this item. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody. Look, I won't spend a lot of time on the council cover paper. I'll take that as read and happy to take any questions at the conclusion of the presentation from Eden Park. The paper in general from council gives an update on the loan, the grant to Eden Park, and the work being done with Auckland Unlimited on joint management and operation of stadium. Look, I'll now hand over to the Eden Park team. As usual, we have Brett Winstanley, the CFO, Nick Saunter, the CEO, and Vicky Salmon, who chairs the Finance and Audit Committee. So I'll pass over to the Eden Park team.
Thank you, John. Eden Park, over to you.
Thank you, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to everyone and councillors, and acknowledge my fellow trustee, Renata Blair. Kia ora. And thank you for your invitation to the Finance and Performance meeting. I'm just waiting for Nick to hopefully upload our presentation. Alongside me I have Nick and Brett, as mentioned, and we'll be presenting to you a financial overview. We presented back in March of our year-end results. Obviously we've had quite a number of events this year, so we've had a reasonable time up to about 2 months ago. But we'll give you a heads up on where we're at, where our loans are, how we're progressing with our grant and CapEx, an update on events and what's happening next year as well, because that has an effect on the city, and our commitments to environment and climate change, and an update on COVID. So I'm going to hand over to Nick. Hopefully, Nick, you can load up our presentation. Thank you. Nick, are you there?
Nick, can you hear us? Brett, have you got a copy? Oh, here we go. No. Here we go. We can see it. Thank you.
Okay, good. So hopefully Nick, who's controlling the presentation, can go through that. Nick, you might need to take either the microphone off or something there we can't hear you yet.
Councillor Simpson, it's Sandra here. Nick actually isn't online and I've got the presentation for you. So is there somebody else from Eden Park who can
I'll just check.
Go through this for you?
Yeah, I can do it with Brett. Just let me have a quick call to Nick, see what's happening.
I know he was having trouble hearing the presentation, but I thought at that point he must have been on the call, so I'm not sure what the extent of his technical difficulties are.
Are you able to get online, or you can't? Yes, they are. Yep. So Sandra's loaded up the presentation, so she can just push it through for us. So if you can come back online, or I can start, and when you're ready. Right. Thanks, Nick. So what I'll do is we'll start, because I think mainly the finances. Sandra, if you could go to the next page, that would be great. Nick's going to join us in a moment.
Kia ora, everybody. It's Brett Winstanley speaking. I'm the CFO of the Eden Park Trust. So this slide is a summary of our financial performance through the year. We have 4 columns there, being as a baseline the annual report from 2020, the 2021 budget numbers, the 10 months to August 21, and a forecast to the end of the financial year. I would just note that the numbers presented at the top do not include the council grants that we've received or the government COVID grants and subsidies. I've just eliminated those to present the information on a like basis, an even playing field, if you like. So as a point of comparison, we had an operating profit before depreciation in our annual report last year of 1.859 million, and after depreciation, a comprehensive loss of $7 million. We were budgeting to make a profit before depreciation of just over $1 million this year, $1,080,000. There was a lot of doubt about exactly what we would or wouldn't be able to deliver during the year. There was a lot of doubt about the certainty of our event schedule and so forth. So we budgeted relatively conservatively accordingly. Moving to the third column, the 10 months performance to August. By this point in the year, we had managed to complete almost our entire schedule of major events. The only major event that we lost towards the beginning of the year was one T20 cricket match between New Zealand and Australia, and we managed to deliver a full year of Super Rugby, albeit in the mixture of the Super Rugby Aotearoa and the Super Rugby Trans-Tasman format. And we had also been fortunate enough to deliver 2 Bledisloe Cup tests in August. That was a change to the test match program. We had at one point in time had a test match against Argentina and South Africa scheduled, but COVID restrictions prevented those events from happening. Another financial highlight of the year, of course, was the fact that we held the first concert at Eden Park in the month of April. So that has enabled us to achieve a profit before depreciation of $4.8 million for the 10 months to August. We still have a depreciation charge to add, and our comprehensive loss at that point in time was $3.187 million. That's not including the income that we will have to recognise for council grants and government COVID support. The final 2 months of the year, we will be in lockdown for the entirety. So we won't have delivered any further events. We won't have had any functions, any of our tourism assets operating. So our performance at the year end will look something like the numbers are forecast there: a profit before depreciation of just under $4 million, and after depreciation for the full year, a comprehensive loss of $5.7 million. Once again, I would add to that we will recognise the council grants as income and the COVID grants and subsidies as income, so they will improve the result. Thank you. Sandra, I think we can move to the next slide. This is a brief summary of the grant funding. 3 years of 3 years of balances there, totaling $9.8 million was the total of the development funding agreement. At the 30th of September, the balance that we have claimed is just under $5.5 million. And we're currently in discussions with FIFA regarding some non-compliance issues, especially stadium lights, which we may seek to include within the third year estimate of $4.14 million. Thank you. If Nick is available, I think he was going to speak to the next slide.
Thank you, Brett, and tēnā koutou katoa. Sandra, will you be operating the slides, please? Thank you very much. Now, firstly, I'd like to thank Auckland Council for their contribution towards these vital projects in relation to our operations. Over the last 12 months, we've implemented a number of venue improvements, including our IPTV, emergency evacuation messaging screens, our CCTV camera replacement to digital technology, recording and storage, our elevator refurbishment for both public and back-of-house lifts, essential electrical upgrades to redundant services to mitigate risk of cyber attack, and obviously the purchase of turf equipment to maintain the council-funded field replacement. Thank you, Sandra. Brett touched on the fact that there is a number of non-compliant requirements for the FIFA Women's World Cup. We are targeting 7, potentially 8 fixtures for Auckland and Tamaki Makaurau. There is also a requirement for consenting, given the window of opportunity for the FIFA Women's World Cup. So we are working with FIFA and also central government around funding opportunities for legacies relating to the 3 Women's World Cups. That includes both lighting and turnstiles. Thanks, Sandra. I'll just hand back to Brett in relation to the loan summary.
Thank you, Nick. So again, very briefly, the loan was established, the $54 million facility was established with an opening balance in September 2019 of $46.545 million. At our last financial year end, the loan balance had reduced to $46 million. And as at the 30th of September, and consistent with the council report, the balance stands at $44.25 million. That is the balance as it stands at today's date. One comment perhaps to add there is that over the course of the next 12 months, we would expect to be drawing down as we fund the cost of an acoustic barrier, which was a requirement of the resource consent approval for concerts.
And just to clarify, also for the Rugby World Cup. Thank you, Sandra.
Nick, is that the end? I've got a blank screen.
No, there's a number of additional slides. I'm not sure if, Sandra, are you having some technical problems?
Sorry, Sandra O'Toole is actually running the presentation for us, and might just need to get Sandra to do something.
If I request control, I do have it on my PC.
Sure.
I was just going to reload it again. It looks like we've got a blank screen from what I've had loaded. So can you just give me a moment, Nick?
Okay.
Or just give Nick the ability to share screen. This is where I need sort of music playing, isn't it?
I think 660 would be appropriate.
Yes, let's go with that.
Very clever, very clever, very clever. Alf, I might need your music.
I can always sing, Chair.
I'm not sure whether that's probably best idea.
I'm just trying to picture all the faces saying, nah, don't even go there with their head shaking.
Fortunately, my camera's off. How are we going, Sandra? Is it Nick doing it or are you doing it?
Right. I think the issue is that there's some very large pictures in here.
It's working now from my perspective. So, Nick, do you want to keep going? We've got the highlights, major events and cancellations slide.
Thank you, Desley. Just in relation to the financial performance, we have had strong member and corporate suite sales. We operate obviously under a very lean team. We have implemented a number of cost savings, and throughout the last 12 months we've secured a number of new icon partners. Obviously concert revenue was central to the performance over the last 12 months, and I do want to acknowledge the team for their efforts under very challenging, I suppose, conditions for the event sector. Some of the highlights over the last 12 months have seen Eden Park being named the #1 stadium in the world in the mid-year rankings with Polestar. We held the first ever women's Super Rugby fixture between the Blues and the Chiefs. As part of our ongoing relationship with the Muslim community, we've held the 2 Eid festivals over the last 12 months again. During the past 12 months, we've also employed 3 refugees through the Belong Aotearoa program. And obviously the Blues winning a Super Rugby title well overdue. And I know, Alfeso, you were excited by that news. In relation to our concerts, we've got a steady stream and a significant pipeline of content coming through, with the first concert being announced, Guns N' Roses, but also a number of pending announcements for the summer of 22 and 2023. In relation to some of our community initiatives, we did receive a commendation from the Police Commissioner in relation to Constable Matthew Hunt's funeral and the completion of the water board project at the park, saving 16 million litres a year. Major events, as touched on, we delivered within 6 weeks, on the 24th of April, the 660 concert, the first ever concert at Eden Park, and still the world record for a concert post-COVID, and something that I think the imagery went around the globe, and we'll touch on that further a bit later. We were fortunate enough to secure the 2 Bledisloe Cup fixtures for Auckland just prior to the lockdown, and we also held our Wellington Phoenix versus the Perth Glory fixture, a Black Caps versus Bangladesh T20, and in partnership with a local art gallery, implemented our first ever inaugural Art in the Park that saw over 14,000 visitors to the park and over 100 local artists being able to exhibit their work at Eden Park. Sadly, we did have a number of cancellations. That included the Pumas fixture, the Springboks, and the entire Farah Palmer Cup and Bunnings NPC matches for Auckland. Thank you, Sandra.
Sandra, can you turn the page, please? Thank you.
I just wanted to talk on the event economics in relation to our first concert. The concert delivered significant benefit for the local community and the country, and this slide demonstrates the yield per seat arising from Eden Park versus the other facilities in New Zealand. The comparison with Mount Smart Stadium relates to LAB, whereas the other comparisons relate to 660. In relation to the numbers, according to data obtained from Auckland Unlimited, utilising event economics, just under 16,000 visitor nights was delivered as a result of the first concert. Quite significant given that we had borders closed and only 6 weeks between that event being announced and then implemented. $5.6 million of benefit was delivered, net benefit for the city, and we had a $3 million increase in regional GDP as a result of the fixture, the event. Thanks, Sandra. Just some of the headlines around the globe. We are very proud to have been able to showcase Aotearoa and Tamaki Makaurau. The first, as I mentioned, the biggest concert in the world post-COVID, and some of the headlines were the lead story in Al Jazeera. The New York Times ran us on the front page, and we had coverage in the Sun and the Telegraph. So some imagery that the team are very, very proud of, but also the ability of the team of 5 million to be able to respond to the COVID outbreak in the first instance. Thank you, Sandra. In relation to our upcoming event calendar, we're currently in discussions with Te Matatini. We're very excited about the opportunity to host Te Matatini at Eden Park. Obviously, it's been already postponed for 12 months, and in conversations currently around ensuring that that event is held in Tamaki Makaurau and at Eden Park, and working through some of the logistics in relation to any potential postponements due to obviously the current Delta outbreak, but also the ability for the Kapahaka teams to train. In consultation with Carl Ross, the CEO of Te Matatini, we are committed to ensure that this event is held at Eden Park. It is something that there's been many years in the planning, and ensuring that we can make sure that that event is delivered and seeing whānau safe at the National Stadium. In relation to the ICC Women's World Cup and the Rugby World Cup, both events are now on sale, and pre-sales have been extremely strong. We're working with our hirers to ensure that they can safely get into the country, and then also with the government's support, see the gender appropriate upgrades of our bathrooms. I've touched on the FIFA Women's World Cup and Guns N' Roses. The next 3 years is going to be very, very exciting at the park, as the escapism that we know that events can deliver, and also the pipeline of content of people wanting to come and perform on our stage. Thank you, Sandra. In relation to our community engagement, I want to acknowledge the Albert Eden Local Board and their ongoing support of initiatives at Eden Park. There are a number of community, both local and regional activities that we implement. Just a couple of highlights has been the Upside Downs Partnership for young families with children with Down syndrome, and also the LifeMark Street to Seat audit that saw us then apply to a charitable trust to get $70,000 worth of grants to enable one of our staff who is a tetraplegic to have automatic doors installed at two of our major entries to make Eden Park the most accessible venue in New Zealand. We also sit on the Crowded Places Advisory Group. Obviously, counter-terrorism and security has been an ongoing concern in relation to the event sector, and to have a presence and be able to demonstrate some of the initiatives that we've been able to implement with Auckland Council support with the upgrading of CCTV has been the benchmark. There's a number of local school initiatives that we implement and community response to ensure that we are seen as both a strategic asset for New Zealand, but also a community asset for Auckland. In recent days, we announced our AA Insurance Big Little sponsorship, where over now 3,500 schools submit to receive $10,000 worth of sports equipment on both the South and North Island as a result of that partnership with AA Insurance. Thank you, Sandra. Eden Park has taken a leadership role in relation to vaccination. We have been previously used as a COVID testing centre and implemented an awareness campaign to ensure that events aren't a distant memory. We've encouraged our both casual and full-time staff to get a shot and be vaccinated, and are working with the DHB and Auckland Council around mass vaccination opportunities at the park. In recent weeks, we've engaged with Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei to look at an initiative in the coming weeks to target particularly Māori in light of vaccination numbers in Māori and Pacific communities. Thank you, Sandra. With regard to Auckland Unlimited, one of the challenges that we face is the uncertainty with the events coming through, and whether it be through MIQ spots or borders. We are looking to streamline the funding relationship to secure major events with Auckland Unlimited, and this is an ongoing conversation from CEO down. Next slide, please, Sandra. In line with Auckland's climate plan, we're taking steps to reduce our carbon footprint. Part of this journey is WELL certification. This certification is to ensure the health and wellness in our buildings via a holistic approach to the build environment, assessing behaviour, operations and design. And by way of background, we engage with JASMAX to look at the carbon footprint of Eden Park, but also future strategies to address some of the challenges that we face in relation to emissions and targets. By way of background, New Zealand must reach net zero carbon by 2050. Buildings have a long life cycle, so anything that's been built around now will be here till at least 2070. So new buildings will have to have half the embodied carbon by 2030 to meet the 2050 target. We must use and reuse existing buildings. To put it in a context, if a 60,000 seat national stadium is our baseline, the building of a new stadium would generate significant carbon emissions due to the extensive use of new concrete and steel. So the opportunity for us to reuse fit-for-purpose componentry of Eden Park is essential for us to meet our carbon goals, but also to avoid a climate catastrophe. Thank you, Sandra. To assist us on that journey, we're looking at a whole range of analysis and the impacts of climate change, including on event delivery. Using life cycle analysis, we're comparing a typical 60-year building life. Building and operating a new 60,000 seat stadium would emit around 325,000 tonnes of carbon emissions. Adapting or reusing an existing Eden Park would save around 137,000 tonnes of carbon. One of the other points that we've been working with the CRL and also the Light Rail project to ensure that Eden Park is well serviced by existing mass transportation services. This will obviously reduce carbon emissions significantly when moving fans to and from events. Leveraging the CRL financial and carbon investment through Kingsland Railway Station is an excellent outcome, and leveraging the value of these investments. Putting it in simple terms, if we were to continue to run Eden Park's operations over the next 100 years, we'd see that 137,000 tonne reduction, or the equivalent of removing 30,000 cars off the road a year. Thank you, Sandra. As I mentioned, we are looking to play our part. We are on a journey in relation to our sustainability initiatives. Spectator waste management has been a real focus over the last 3 years. The eliminating of single-use plastic at the park, ensuring that our promoters don't use single-use promotional products, and a number of initiatives including the sorting of waste post-event to ensure we're not diverting waste to landfill. Our bees that are on site, there's research and data capture on the movements in the area. We have our on-site garden that uses local business compost to then, in partnership with the Morningside Urban Market Garden, grow vegetables at Eden Park and then sell them to the likes of Crave in the community. Brett mentioned earlier about the conversion to LED lighting. That is a big project, not only from an environmental perspective, but also a compliance perspective that we're looking to implement across the entire stadium. Our water harvesting initiatives on the South Stand, but also the implementation of the bore, has seen that 16 million litres saved, and the implementation of compostable packaging across the stadium in our retail catering. In our last catch-up 6+ months ago, there was a comment in relation to our previous field and the selling of the surface. I did talk to the team following it, and there was a stat that I thought was worth reporting, that over 100 tonnes of landfill was diverted by selling that product to residents in the area. So again, it was a great story in terms of the sustainability initiative, but also ensuring that we are focused on the environment. Next slide, Sandra. So I'd just like to finally just acknowledge again the team at Eden Park. The stadium is built for the world stage. We're looking forward to making more moments and placing that ability to help New Zealand rebuild post-COVID. We know that there's significant challenges with mental health arising from the lockdowns. We know that events and the employment opportunities and economic benefits derived from events can really help kickstart the economy, but also Auckland into a post-COVID era. So thank you, Desley.
Oh, thank you very much, Nick and Vicky and Brett, for that outstanding presentation. I have a number of questions, so we'll go to those now for you. And if councillors would just like to ask who at the Eden Park team they would like to answer their question. First question for Eden Park comes from Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker.
Sure. Hi, Nick. I've got a few questions. And I'm looking at the presentation that you've given, and I'm looking at the page on the summary of financial performance.
Yes.
I just wonder whether Sandra can put that up. So it's page 2.
It's right at the beginning, Sandra. It's not that one.
Second page in.
Yes, just give me a moment. It's a big document, so.
Look, I'll start the question anyway.
That's it.
Thank you.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would suggest that the financial performance is outstanding. What it shows to me is that Eden Park has traded profitably, obviously before depreciation. And you pointed out that you were the #1 stadium. I venture to say from a financial perspective that might well be the case, and I'd invite your comment on that. But what I'm interested in, what are the reasons for this financial performance, Nick?
Thank you, Wayne. And we do need to acknowledge our lean team. They do an outstanding job. We did implement a strategy of emerging stronger post-COVID, and we put ourselves in the best possible position once we were able to deliver events, and I publicly acknowledge the team of 5 million and our ability. We were the envy of the world, hosting sell-out rugby fixtures or indeed concert content when most other economies and societies were locked down. This has seen a very strong membership response and also corporate suite response. We've also managed to secure a number of new partners over the last 12 months who've bought into our strategic plan and also our game plan around values and behaviours. We are a nimble organisation. We look to pivot. We implemented a number of events like Art in the Park. Very few venues in the world have had art shows displaying local artists, and that was just such a wonderful success to see artists that hadn't been able to exhibit coming to the park, and a lot of them sold out, and we're already locked in for next year. I've mentioned about our lean operations and cost-saving initiatives that we implemented. We also proactively contacted our hirers to ensure that content that was potentially in the pipeline, we wanted to have put up our hand and make sure they considered Eden Park. And we saw that with the second Bledisloe Cup being held in Auckland. If that fixture hadn't been secured for Auckland, we would have had some challenges in relation to our members and also corporate suites and Icon partners not being able to deliver on obligations. I do want to acknowledge members and our corporate partners. They have supported us throughout the lockdown period, and we have looked to do creative initiatives. We've got our Toro Turf Cam that people can watch grass grow. There's a whole range that is available on our website, but really trying to not only engage with the community through innovation, but also through our partners and deliver the financial results that we have. Our team, as we mentioned previously, during the first lockdown took a 20 to 80% pay cut. Our trustees for 3 months foregoed their trustee fees. So this has been a team effort to deliver the finances that we see today.
Thanks, Nick. The other question I've got just goes to the slide that's about 4 down, event economics. Could you pick that one up, Sandra? It's about 4 or 5 down.
Keep going, son. Oh, that's the one that's got a lot of what?
Apologies, Desley. I did have some technical problems earlier.
Oh, that's okay, Nick. No worries.
I'll start the question, Madam Chair, and
Thank you.
It goes to benchmarking and comparisons, which is what this table is about. So I understand that you've got obviously gross receipts yield per seat, but having said that, if we're talking about benchmarking as it goes to comparing Eden Park with a number of the other venues, you've got corporate suites that aren't given away, and you've also got membership. So I'm assuming that this yield per seat is before the consideration of those items. So your actual yield, if you like, is actually more than just yield per seat. Would that be correct?
That's correct. There's a number of reasons why we see ourselves as the venue of choice for fans and promoters in Auckland, and that is the facilities, the accessibility, but also we do have the opportunity for up to 10,000 plated meals at events. So for premium content, and I know Desley at the last session I mentioned Barbara Streisand, so I'll use Barbara Streisand as the example. It does deliver an opportunity for a promoter to have up to 10,000 plated meals across the venue, and that economic benefit then flows through, whether it be in relation to supply chain. We use a number of local suppliers for our fruit and veg or our meat, the staff and the workforce. So there's a number of downstream effects that our corporate offering can then deliver for premium content. That's not to say that other venues in Auckland won't play a part in any future stadium strategy. And there we saw yesterday with Snoop Dogg being announced for the Truss Outer Oval. So I think it comes down to what's best for Auckland, but also venue of best fit. And in this instance, it demonstrates how strong the yield can be from the events delivered.
Okay, and the last question I've got, Madam Chair, just goes to the analysis that you've presented around climate change, and I understand that. My question is around I would suggest, very close relationship around reducing carbon emissions and the efficiency of capital investment as it goes to Eden Park compared to other stadiums. Yes, I understand what you've done as it goes to carbon, and yes, I understand that you're translating that in terms of dollar terms as it goes to investment. My question is around what sort of information have you got around the capital investment comparisons as it goes to other stadiums?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Walker. I don't have information in relation to CapEx spend across other facilities in New Zealand. We do have extensive discussions with facilities across the ditch, but also in the UK and the US to see where money has been allocated. The number one issue for any stadium or arguably any building is the CapEx plan and that investment over whether it be a 10 or in this instance a 70-year or 60-year life cycle.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. A second question from Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. And firstly, Vicky, Brett and Nick, congratulations to you and the team on Eden Park being named #1 stadium in the world. I think that's certainly, a big ray of sunshine in what's, been a tough time for our city, and to have that sort of kudos recognised across the world, and at the same time being putting on the number of events you've been able to, by good grace amongst other things, is really a big positive and something that's uplifting, Auckland at a time when, we're under the pump a bit. So congratulations to all concerned there. That's outstanding. Just in terms of the report back to us and noting that some of the leading work there had been done with respect to climate change and a lot of events and promotions to do that are community based. I just want to drill down on one of the rather small specifics, but I think an important one, and Nick, and you might be the best person to answer this, and it goes to the purchase of this turf equipment to maintain Eden Park surface, and that was a council funded item. And I really just want to ask about the importance of that sort of investment, given that clearly the huge range of activities that you're now performing at Eden Park. So, we all know that you might have cricket on Saturday and the Blues game on the Sunday and conceivably a concert or other activities in between. How important is that sort of keeping abreast of that sort of technology, given the challenges and the opportunities that exist on world-class stadiums like Eden Park now, where you can host a number of events within a short space of time, but where obviously the condition of the surface is absolutely crucial to that kind of high-quality sports offering?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Watson. There's no question without the council's investment in our new surface, we would not have been able to deliver the event calendar that we have over the last 12 months, but then moving forward into the next 3 years, the frequency of events would have been compromised. So again, just want to reiterate our thanks on behalf of the Eden Park Trust to Auckland Council for that support. That surface, it's our #1 asset, and the equipment, the HG Hero Hybrid Edition, is something that we have seen the performance over the last 12 months, that we've had cricket fixtures, that we've had extensive rain and been able to still host a limited overs fixture. Again, with the previous field and the life of 17 plus years, we wouldn't have been able to do so. So that exposure on broadcast, or even for the fans in the stadium that stood and stayed around, wouldn't have been able to experience. That infrastructure that we purchased is purpose built infrastructure for hybrid fields, and it is something that we think that we can offer some support at other venues, whether it be in the local area or across the Auckland Council network. That machinery is state of the art and could also manage other fields with that technology. So we are looking at what other options that we can do. We've got a very skilled team, and to ensure that we can retain them and develop them, we need to explore these types of opportunities.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'll put an order in for North Harbour Stadium, Nick, so let us know what you can do with that. Thanks.
Yeah.
We'd be delighted to do that.
Right, next question, Councillor Fletcher.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And to the whole of the Eden Park team, may I just say thank you for the success you've delivered on the council's confidence in you and the investment that we've made in you. It's been terrific to hear this presentation today. But my question is particularly for Nick. And Nick, if we didn't have COVID right now, so take COVID out of the equation, what are the biggest challenges in an operational sense looking forward so that you can continue to deliver this success?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Fletcher. I look at it in two streams. One is the retention of talent, and it's a very competitive market now in terms of, and it is a narrow skill set. So to be able to retain our talent is something that we're always looking at ways in which we can continue to develop our staff and motivate them. In relation to the asset, I mentioned earlier, asset management for any stadium is the #1 priority. So looking at CapEx, ensuring that we can keep up with trends across the globe, the fan experience and the customer experience. There's expectations. And so, again, the council's contribution towards our super screen, we've seen Graham Norton live streaming his show on Eden Park super screen with a local winery. So the diversity of content and utilisation then links into that, keeping the venue state of the art and having the ability to innovate. So I would say just our people are critical. Secondly, the investment in the asset. And thirdly, that ongoing innovation to sweat the asset and utilise it for not only commercial purposes, but also for community activations.
Thank you for that answer. And may I say, seeing that photograph of your little girls growing up, it was quite a shock to me that they're no longer babies.
Yes, very proud dad of two young Kiwi girls.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darby, next question.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Nick and Brett and Vicky. Hey, could we just, what is Polestar? Because I think that rating was not about, everything about a stadium. It was about patronage at a particular point in time when I understand all the, many of the American and the European stadiums are all closed, but we had people. I've gone to the Polestar website and I've searched Eden Park and nothing comes up. So can we just have some, expansion on what Polestar and that rating actually means, Nick? That's my first question, Chair.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Darby. So Polestar is the industry benchmark for music in terms of attendance, but also trends in music. So we've got Rolling Stone, you've got Polestar. They put out figures on a 6-monthly basis. I'm happy to share with you, they did a feature story on Auckland and Eden Park resulting from it. And as I say, we were ranked #1 stadium in the world by Polestar in their June figures. They featured within that edition a story on what's next for the venue. Obviously, I think we've just got to take some time and reflect and be proud Kiwis in saying the #1 stadium, the #1 act in the world, 660, topped the Polestar ratings in terms of tickets sold globally. And Brent Eccles and Eccles Entertainment, a local promoter based in Morningside, was the #1 promoter in the world. So to take those 3 titles is something that we're happy to receive and we're happy to promote for our city. And I think in this challenging time when people are locked down now, we need to focus on some of this positivity.
No, that's fair enough. It's the content of music. It's not the sports content, and it was during a period when the North American stadiums were mainly closed down. Hey, just going to content. Other than that, Nick, and content is the king in stadia, and the anchor content at Eden Park continues to be sport. But good on you for exploring the. Diversifying into others. Super Rugby is a major generator of receipts at Eden Park. For 2022, there are 2 Auckland Super Rugby teams domiciled in Auckland, the Blues and the new Moana Pacific team. Moana Pacific, I understand, are going to be domiciled at Mount Smart, not Eden Park. Is that correct? Did they express an interest to go to Eden Park, and what transpired there whereby they went to Mount Smart? And second part, Nick, is have the Blues contracted? Have they inked an agreement with you for 2022? And last part is, what New Zealand cricket content do you actually have under contract for the summer of 21-22?
Thanks for the three questions, Councillor Darby. So in relation to Moana Pacifica, we did have discussions with them, limited discussions, I might say, at board level within the Moana Pacifica team with Sir Brian Williams, and also when Deloitte was doing the business case around the team. We provided feedback into that. My understanding is Auckland Unlimited has signed an agreement with Moana Pacifica for Mount Smart to be the training facility and also the home facility for, I believe, 8 years or something that Auckland Unlimited will be able to provide you. That doesn't necessarily mean that the big games won't be played at Eden Park. So to put it in a context, in Melbourne, when you had the introduction of a second A-League franchise, the low-drawing games were played at the smaller venue like Mount Smart, or in the instance Amy Park, and the high-drawing derby fixtures where you can maximise the yield were played at Etihad Stadium or the equivalent of Eden Park. So over time we would hope to see those derbies or derbies, depending upon how you pronounce them, to be played at Eden Park and maximise the commercial return. We were confident with our commercial offer. I think I've mentioned this previously, because of our membership and our corporate suite revenue, something that differs from the economic model at other venues in Auckland. The operational costs for hirers are underwritten by a membership program. So before a ball is kicked, the hirers' costs are covered in a sports context. So that's a real positive, but obviously there was alternate reasons for Moana Pacifica to choose Mount Smart, and I'm not privy to those. In relation to the comment around the Blues, our relationship with the Blues is through Auckland Rugby. So Auckland Rugby is the contracting party for all rugby content at Eden Park. That being said, we've got a direct relationship with the CEO and the board of the Blues, and we have some representatives from Auckland Rugby on our board, but also on the Blues board. There's ongoing discussions around what content is played at Eden Park. To put it in a context, when you have a crowd of 6,000 for a Rebels fixture secured by Auckland Unlimited, I think this year, we look at that fixture and say, actually, in terms of venue of best fit, it might actually be better played at a smaller facility. So historically, we've played between 7 and 8 fixtures at the park, depending upon the Trans-Tasman fixtures and whether they come to fruition with borders and double vaccination programs will depend upon what the mix of the game. So SANZA hasn't released the fixture for this coming season, but it's likely that they'll be making announcements in the coming weeks. And the final question in relation to cricket, the real challenge is we had a really action-packed start of the year next year with Te Matatini, the Women's Cricket World Cup, and a number of other pieces of content in the mix. Unfortunately now, with borders and uncertainty, a number of those events are now postponed or cancelled. So we're in discussions with now New Zealand Cricket. Our fixtures really depend upon the touring content. So I think originally this summer was due to be Netherlands, Ireland and South Africa. So depending upon whether or not those countries can come in will depend upon then what fixtures are held at the park. But I've said it before, the players and the fans, short form cricket at Eden Park, there's no better atmosphere.
Okay, thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Newman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you very much, Nick and Brett and Vicky. Yeah, look, a number of comments have been made. I guess my reflection, and I do have a question, but my reflection would be, my heart was in my mouth about whether 660 would come off, but I mean, the proof of the pudding is that Auckland turned out like that, and I think in terms of this year, that concert at that time was a real standout for Auckland. And congratulations to you and the team for delivering it. It certainly settled the argument for me. But in relation to moving forward, I'm interested to understand Eden Park's approach to patronage in relation to people who are unvaccinated. As we move forward, obviously foreshadowing what the Prime Minister has hinted at in relation to vaccine passports. This is a complex issue, and I would imagine that the events sector and people who run big facilities where you're talking about very large crowds must have some views on this and must be giving some thought and reflection as to how that's going to work. So Nick, are you in a position to comment on this? Because this is a confronting issue for many in our community, but I appreciate the need for people to have choice about what they decide to do, but choice comes with consequences. So are you able to comment?
Yes, and thank you for the question, Councillor Newman. In relation to vaccine passports, we were consulted in the process with government, and we have made some public comments to say it's a welcome step to reopen the venue, but also to see events to be held, knowing the downstream effect in terms of employment and economic benefits, but also the escapism and mental health benefits. COVID passports is one step. We've seen, and we're in constant dialogue with both the UK and the US in relation to COVID passports, the practicalities of implementing COVID passports. So the UK have moved away from them. Scotland at mass gatherings are doing spot checks, and Australia has said by the end of the year they're unlikely to then require COVID passports. So we see it as a transitional phase. We've just been encouraging everyone, and we're doing everything within our powers to say, don't let events be a distant memory. Get vaccinated, contribute to your community, help your whānau. COVID passports, yes, we're awaiting an announcement from the government, and then that will assist us with the formation of our policy for both full-time and casual employees, but also contractors coming to site, and shape that positioning. But like any employer, you need to ensure that you're providing a safe workplace.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I have a question for staff from Councillor Walker, but before I do that, are there any more questions for Eden Park first, before I go to staff and then comments? No? Okay. Councillor Walker, you have a question for council staff.
Sure. I'm not sure who, but it goes like this. We've got this operational partnering proposal that's underway. There really has been very little information publicly available around that. We've had a couple of workshops. The questions I've got, and they follow on from some of the questions that I asked Nick Sortner, who referred to the number one issue for any stadiums is the CapEx plan. And my question is around what information we're going to receive around the CapEx plans for the Auckland stadiums, and also what the operational differences and performances that go to benchmarking with stadiums like Eden Park and other stadiums. That those questions are also informed by the comments that Nick Sortner made in his presentation around climate change, where I would suggest there's a very close correlation between capital spend and stadiums as a carbon emitting asset, if you like. So I've got some questions there. Obviously, there are other questions around differences in the model as it goes to corporate suites and membership that are clear. How is it possible to actually receive some of this information, Madam Chair? And I'm happy to take a number of questions and comments offline to officers around that if that works better.
I think it does, Councillor. This item, of course, is about the last, results for Eden Park, and what your questions are really relating to the stadium strategy. So I would just suggest that you do an email, and we'll get those followed up for you. All right, put your questions in email. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go now to comments, and I'll start with Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My comment will be a fairly brief one. I just want to thank the Eden Park Trust members again for the excellent presentation today. I think in terms of our investment via the grant to them, we're seeing some outstanding results across the board. And I think the thing that continues to impress me about the performance of Eden Park and aided by our financial support is the breadth of activities and codes in parts of the community that they are now serving, from our traditional sports of cricket and rugby, but increasingly towards different sorts of community types of groups and events that are being put on, and I think not least of which is that growing recognition, not just within Auckland, but internationally, as to the iconic nature of Eden Park that was well and truly reflected in that award, or that recognition, as the world's #1 venue by Polestar just during this very year. And I think certainly it provides a stark contrast to what's been happening in other countries. But what I also think it signals, and especially in light of some of these events that are coming up, like the FIFA Women's World Cup, where we're by all accounts targeting 8 fixtures, the Women's Cricket World Cup, and going back years to the Rugby World Cup, to the Men's Cricket World Cup. What a very strong position Eden Park is in, but also Auckland as the city in which Eden Park is based. So all the information I see reported here today, Madam Chair, goes not just to the performance of Eden Park, but I think to the performance of our city for our own communities, but also increasingly internationally in terms of other countries and other codes that recognise that high status that Eden Park occupies. Just finally, Madam Chair, and I think it goes to the potential benefits to our region as a whole beyond just Eden Park as a venue. When I see the commentary in the report today on the turf equipment, on the climate change awareness, I would hope that through the work that's been done in Auckland Unlimited, that kind of benefits, or that knowledge base, if you like, is used then to enhance our other stadiums, Western Springs, North Harbour and Mount Smart in a similar way. I just note in that respect, Madam Chair, that back in 1991 Auckland had a population of 870,000. We're now 1.63 million and growing, and back in 1991 we had the same range of stadiums. So I think it's absolutely imperative that not only do we retain what we've got, but we utilise the expertise that we've seen displayed to us today from the Eden Park Trust members to benefit our whole region and the other 3 key stadiums that serve them. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I agree with you. Members, I've been a bit remiss. I should move and second this. I've had a request from Councillor Fletcher to move, and I'm happy to second.
I have a quick comment, Madam Chair.
Yes, I know, Councillor. I can see that. So it has been moved and seconded. I will now go to Councillor Walker for comment.
Sure. I really just want to follow on from Councillor Watson with accommodations for Eden Park. It's very clear, I would suggest, that the brand of Eden Park, certainly over the last year internationally, has probably lifted significantly. And in most entities, financial entities, there's a very significant financial value attached to that. I don't know what that value is, Madam Chair, but I would suggest compared to any other stadium in Auckland, it's exceptional. I'd just like to give commendations to Eden Park around the lead that they're giving around their climate change analysis, and I would suggest that that serves as somewhat of a benchmark and a template for council to consider for its stadiums and other significant assets. And if we can have some conversation around that, I think that would be useful, because there's urgency around that as it goes to our investment decisions. And the other observation I'd make, Madam Chair, and again it goes to a commendation, is how Eden Park has pivoted, it's turned around, it's been nimble, and from an investment perspective, I'd suggest that any investment and support on Auckland Council's part has been well repaid, even over the last year, and I don't doubt will enhance going forward. So thank you, Eden Park.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I've got no more requests for comment, so I'll just wrap this up by adding my thanks yet again to the Eden Park team, to Vicky as one of the board members, and Nick as Chief Executive, and Brett as the CFO. Look, I want to start by congratulating you on your financial performance. It's outstanding. I also want to acknowledge you on your general performance. I mean, for whatever reason, to be named the best stadium in the world under any circumstances is to be commended. I also want to acknowledge the 660 concert, outstanding with that. Global recognition of Tamaki Makaurau for Auckland and indeed for New Zealand is something that we congratulate you for. I'm going to add another little interesting one. The front page of the New York Times is no mean feat either, and it just really highlighted the fact that you have got that wonderful global recognition. On a more localised, I want to thank you for your ongoing community engagement. I think it's been outstanding, and thank you for the thanks for the local board work there as well. To be named the most accessible stadium in New Zealand is also another point worth giving you acknowledgement for. That's fantastic. So you've thanked council, and I think we want to thank you. So thank you very much. Another comment from Councillor Fletcher. Councillor?
Madam Chair, it was simply to say how pleasant it is to have some really positive news.
Thank you. That was very succinct. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll take it to the vote now. All those in favour say aye.
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 Carried, and that's unanimous. Thank you very much, Eden Park. Congratulations. Right, now we will go back to item 6, and Brett Catchpole, I believe, is now on the call, and Brett, sorry, I believe that the fact that you weren't on the call wasn't your fault at all. It was the fact that someone didn't tell you we were ready to go. So I will now hand back to you for local board input. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, I hadn't received the notice that your previous meeting had concluded. So my apologies for delaying anything if there's any apologies needed. Look, the Papakura Local Board is appreciative of Eku Panuku's response to the local board's request by agreeing to deliver urban renewal and housing outcomes for the 2632 O'Shaughnessy Street and 36 Coles Crescent under the Eku Panuku support development category. Now, these are items that these properties have been in front of the council previously, but now Panuku has come online with us and are very supportive of our endeavours. The board believes this will actively contribute to the revitalisation of the Papakura town centre by making the most of Papakura's metropolitan centre zoning status and deliver high quality development that contributes to the urban regeneration and vibrant and prosperous local economy. The board requests a meaningful consultation approach between the local board and Eku Panuku in relation to these two properties. The board therefore endorses the disposal of 26 to 32 O'Shanassy Street and 36 Coles Crescent in Papakura in the context of above. I do need to add that we are concerned about a current claim from the original Davis family, and we want to make sure that is resolved with Panuku before anything else is finalised. But we are supportive of the sale and endorse Panuku's approach to it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Any questions, councillors? Right. Do we want to use Councillor Dalton, Councillor Newman as a vote of thanks?
Yes. Thanks, Brent, for that presentation.
Right. Well, I'll have that that the vote of thanks has been moved by Councillor Dalton, seconded by Councillor Newman. With no questions, any comments? I'll take it to the vote then. All those in favour say aye.
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 Thank you. And thanks, Brent, for presenting. And I acknowledge again that it wasn't your fault that you went on time.